Is North Korea agonizing? Just not interested, or is it something else? At the start of last week, South Korea offered rare face-to-face talks with North Korea at the shared border village in the demilitarized zone. Still, no response from North Korea. With the possibility of an inter-Korea breakthrough up in the air, South Korea's new administration unveiled a report outlining its policy objectives for the next 5 years. In it, an ambitious goal. President Moon Jae-in is seeking a deal in 2020 with North Korea for a complete denuclearization of the isolated state. This in return for a peace treaty with North Korea to guarantee the survival of the Kim Jong-un regime. How feasible is that plan? Considering North Korea's latest rejection of South Korea's olive branch, will it even find it attractive? What does North Korea's silence mean for South Korean President Moon Jae-in's outreach and future of the inter-Korean relations? The perennial North Korea question, we dig further on Peninsula 24 today. Let's get it rolling. And in the studio with me this week, to my left, Dr. Go Myung-hyun, Research Fellow at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Good to have you with us this week.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, our very own Dr. Chang-su. As always, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Now, I want to begin with South Korea's olive branch to North Korea. So back to my opening questions. Apparently snub at this point by the North. Is this a sign of serious contemplation by Kim Jong-un, or is it just not interested in your perspective?
So, my blunt answer to your question would be North Korea is not interested in dialogue with South Korea at this moment. And the reason is because North Korea is engaged in this long-term strategy to compel the United States to come to the negotiation table and grant North Korea nuclear power status. So in order to achieve that objective, what North Korea can do, the only way North Korea can achieve that objective is by increasing tensions over the Korean Peninsula. That way, it presents a stark choice to the United States, a choice between military intervention, which is very risky, as we all know, or negotiate and accommodate North Korea's long-term strategic objective of becoming a nuclear state. So, that's the North Korea's long-term objective, but then South Korea's engagement efforts by the present administration contradicts North Korea's long-term strategy, which is to increase tensions, because our engagement efforts lowers the tensions in the Korean Peninsula. So that's the major contradiction between North Korea's strategy and South Korea's strategy. And for that reason alone, I believe Kim Jong-un is not interested in talking to South Korea at this moment. He might consider using South Korea's offer for its strategic use later on. But then for now, I think North Korea is very single-minded about its focus on increasing tensions.
I have a slightly different view because I think because this was a very short notice proposal to the North Korea, and they had no time to really delve into the proposal themselves, because they have to read the lines, what they really mean, what are the motives, intentions, strategy behind these proposals. So I think even though they are actually interested in this very initial proposal by the new government in Seoul, they are actually hiding their interest, because they're looking for a much more higher level proposal. Because this time it was basically a working level proposal in the military talks and also the Red Cross talks. I think there are probably 3 reasons why they are delaying responses to our proposals, because they are endeavoring to decipher South Korea's intentions and strategy. Because there's a lack of political and military confidence built between two Koreas. And second one, and this is basically, again, as I said, is a working level proposal, not higher level talks proposal. So they are waiting for much more higher level talks by the South Korean government. And the second one is actually they, meaning the North Korean leadership, is weighing their own strategy for talks with Washington against Seoul's initial proposal. So I think that's why they are taking time and taking time to contemplate what kind of impacts, what kind of benefits they might have by responding to South Korea's initial response. Third one, I think this is a little bit sounds strange to you, but my personal impression was North Korea is looking for our responses because Moon Jae-in government has been very popular in South Korea because his popularity is still running very high, and they are really looking for how long this, Mr. Moon Jae-in's popularity will go on. So I think this is. They are also worried about, even though this is a very liberal and sometimes we call it progressive government. I don't think it's progressive, it's a liberal government as well. But they are weighing the potential impacts on this liberal government as well. If they have such a good impacts on South Korea, they might not work for their own benefits in North Korea. So if they're really checking what kind of impact it will have on them and also on the Moon Jae-in government. So that's why they are waiting for some more time to come up with all the answers to some of the questions and suspicions we might have.
Well, it looks like the two leaders, so South Korea's Moon Jae-in and North Korea's Kim Jong-un, they're not on the same page at this moment, at least. But amid all this, the new Moon Jae-in administration unveiled its 100 policy agenda for the next 5 years. And of course, North Korea policy is one of the many. In it, for the first time, we're seeing a timeline for the denuclearization and for the new president's engagement with North Korea. First of all, the 2020 deadline for the denuclearization of North Korea and signing a peace treaty, how, both in terms of effectiveness and feasibility, how feasible is that? 2020 is not too far away.
That's correct. So 2020 is going to mark the midpoint for the President Moon's tenure as president. So it's only 2.5 years from now. So we might think, well, that's too soon and all that. But before we scratch our heads over the logic behind this proposal, we have to think about North Korea's race to complete its nuclear development. Tae Young-oh, the former deputy ambassador to North Korea's deputy ambassador to the United Kingdom, who defected last year to South Korea, he has stated in the media that he believes the Kim Jong-un's goal is to complete nuclear development by this year. And also, if we listen to American and South Korean experts on nuclear development, there's some consensus about the fact that North Korea will be able to build just like more than 100 nuclear warheads by 2020, in addition to achieving an ICBM capability that reaches the continental United States.
Sure.
So, no, we have two key dates here, like 2020 proposed by President Moon, and 2020 that the experts believe it's going to mark the completion at the latest of North Korea's nuclear program. So in a way, there are two races going on right now. The race to stop North Korea from becoming a nuclear state, and the race by North Korea to become a nuclear state.
Those two are at the opposite ends of the spectrum, actually.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's going to come to a clash. And then, President Moon, in my view, packaged very nicely this idea that 2020 is going to be the deadline, and discuss about engaging North Korea, providing economic assistance and humanitarian assistance and all that. But I think we should read between the lines and focus on the story that hasn't been told yet, which is about deterrence. President Moon has already proposed to increase the defense spending from 2.5% of GDP to 2.9% of GDP, which is like an overnight increase of 20%,
right.
Which is a huge, it's going to be a huge increase in defense spending on the part of South Korea. In order to complete our deterrence measures against North Korea, which are kill chain, Korean missile defense, as well as Korean massive retaliation strategy. So these are the three key pillars of our deterrence strategy against North Korea. So there's another issue, which is the issue of postponing the return of the OPCON, operational control, wartime operational control of South Korean forces to the United States. President Moon has proposed to get it back from the United States during his tenure as a president. But this time, he announced that he's going to push it back to some time in the future.
Yes.
So it gets closer to what President Moon's conservative predecessors have been advocating, which is to postpone the OPCON transfer indefinitely. So we can see from this that President Moon is increasing deterrence posture against North Korea. It's not it's not like weakening the sanctions against North Korea. So I think what President Moon is telling North Korea is that we have a window of opportunity until 2020. You can respond until then, or otherwise we're going to keep pressuring North Korea until North Korea comes to the negotiation table and talks about denuclearization. So the President Moon's announcement is going to impose a deadline by 2020. It's going to we have to read it between the lines, and I think there's a huge stake hidden behind the carrot.
Now, But despite all, President Moon Jae-in, in his 5-year policy roadmap, has another agenda on North Korea, and it's his vision to build an inter-Korean economic community that's dubbed New Korean Peninsula Economic Map. Of course, this envisions creating joint industrial zones like the one now closed Kaesong Industrial Park and traffic networks along the east and west coast of the peninsula. At this point, the Kaesong Industrial Park remains closed. The Mount Kumgang tours have been suspended. This vision of economic cooperation with North Korea, I'm concerned that this could, well amount to a breach of international sanctions if we do go ahead with this plan.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's so we have to focus on the details again, and then I think. But we have to understand that for the Moon administration, economic engagement is what underlies its policy towards North Korea. The whole policy about North Korea, we call it policy engagement. We often talk about cultural exchanges, people-to-people exchanges, like, for example, President Moon's invitation to North Korea to participate in the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. So when we hear news stories like that, so that defines our idea of engagement, but the real key part of the engagement policy is economic engagement. So because Moon administration people, key advisors believe, only if we have, we meaning like the two Koreas, have a very strong economic relationship. That's the only way we can reduce tension over the Korean Peninsula and build a sustainable foundation for the denuclearization of North Korea. That's why they are so focused on the economic engagement. But having said that, that's the long-term goal for the Moon administration. They would like to predicate their long-term policy for stabilization over the Korean Peninsula first with some sort of a nuclear freeze, then followed by massive economic engagement. We have to be careful about what the ultimate objective is, because what President Moon has proposed, the new Korean Peninsula economic map, that satisfies a very important need on the part of North Korea. And it's been designed such that it appeals to North Koreans, because what North Koreans really want at this point is not so much the food aid or other types of humanitarian assistance, it's developmental assistance. And the reason why the developing traffic networks along the coast, along the east, on the west side and the east side, is because North Korea's economic development has been hit the bottleneck because of lack of infrastructure. So that's exactly what the North Korea needs, and that's what South Korea is going to provide. And then that therefore, the policymakers in South Korea believe it's going to act as a strong incentive for North Korea to start behaving in a way.
If I might, I'd like to add to what Professor Ko just said, because I believe engaging North Korea economically sounds good. We have a really good intention and to really help them out of their poverty. But the problem, again, is it takes two to tango, and it takes two hands, as we call it, to clasp. North Korea still has suspicion about what are the motives behind this kind of new, good-looking proposal, engaging North Korea in giving all kind of economic aid and expanding exchange and dialogue with North Korea. That sounds good, but unless they have confidence, both political and military confidence in the new government, they will not easily come to the negotiating table. Because, as you know, because we're talking about the effectiveness of UN Security Council sanctions, because there's a lot of bypass, and the North Korean economy is actually getting better and better despite all the pressure. As we just talked about trade, and there are a lot of the Chinese companies who are actually helping North Koreans to get all these missile-related weapons and techniques. So as long as this kind of situation continues, and one thing very important is Chinese leadership still is not happy with the idea North Korea can collapse anytime soon, or maybe this is a kind of lure for North Korea's kind of eventual collapse. So as long as we have this kind of concepts, this belief, I would say, by Beijing and Washington, this will be very difficult, because North Korea's believe, we are getting better and better. We don't need any assistance from South Korea. We need this kind of dialogue with Washington first for ICM capability and peace treaty with the United States. So this is much higher on the agenda. So this lower type of agenda will not interest North Korean leadership, and they will not be so interested in getting economic aid from South Korea as they would like 5 or 10 years ago. I think the situation has changed a lot.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So we have to be very careful, even though this is a new proposal, and we have to prove that we really mean that we are really going to engage you, help you out of poverty, and we need a much more reconciliation, harmony on the current people. That's good. So we have to show it with the workable actions rather than just rhetoric and terms. They have to make them believe in our intention and also our capability to help them. Otherwise, if we just have a good intention and no capability, because we have a lot of domestic problems to finance all these. So as long as we can have the good intention and to the kind of capability to implement all these good actions, then they will be gradually develop some confidence in us. And so that's my point is it's going to take a lot of time.
Let's try to get a third pair of eyes on this issue. Joining us from New York via Skype is Dr. Ralph Kosa, President of the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Dr. Kosa, thank you so much for joining us on Peninsula 24.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Now, what we're seeing from the new South Korean administration is an engagement policy unseen from its predecessors for nearly 10 years. Of course, this may not necessarily be in line with President Donald Trump's policy of engagement and pressure, or if you look at it from a different angle, it could actually be in line with that. Would you say the two allies are out of tune in dealing with North Korea at this point?
I don't think so, not yet anyway. The point of pressure is to get the North Koreans to come to talks. The point of talks is to get the North Koreans to give up their nuclear weapons. So if President Moon can get them to talks, that's a good thing, and I think that supports what the U.S. wants. But it's the end result that's going to matter in the final analysis, and both the U.S. and Korea want the same end result, but clearly the North Koreans don't.
Right, and lastly, I want to ask you of your forecast of inter-Korean talks happening anytime soon, and how the U.S. and South Korea should work together in dealing with the North Korea issue.
Well, I think that the prospects for talks are probably fairly slim. The North Koreans may be willing to talk about ways that the South can provide them with assistance. They may try to get the South to stop doing things like the propaganda broadcast. But the North has made it very clear that the nuclear issue is between them and the United States. So I think it'll be very difficult for President Moon to get them to put that topic on the table in North-South talks. I think what happens is the U.S. and South Korea need to sort of make a division of labor, with the North focusing, the South focusing on the North-South issues, humanitarian issues, opening up with North Korea, and the U.S. focusing on the nuclear issue. But the two of them have to be in sync, and they have to coordinate with one another, and we have to make sure we don't do anything that relieves the pressure on North Korea so that they'll be willing to actually give up their nuclear weapons and start behaving in a responsible manner.
All right, Ralph Kosa, President of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, thank you so much for your insights today. So even if there is a breakthrough in inter-Korean relations and the two Koreas arrive at cross-border talks, what I could not find in Mr. Moon's policy agenda this time around for the next 5 years was exactly how he plans to denuclearize North Korea, or how he plans to get North Korean leadership to give up its nuclear weapons. Are you two experts able to read something that I'm not seeing in this policy agenda?
Well, that's actually a very challenging question. Only Kim Jong-un knows what he's thinking and was preparing for the future. But if my assessment on North Korea's strategy is correct, as I mentioned before, North Korea's strategy right now is a single-minded focus on engaging in bilateral diplomatic negotiations with the United States about North Korea's future status as a nuclear power. Then North Korea will be totally focused on its current pace. But the thing is that if North Korea, for example, gets frustrated in each quest, say like the United States makes it very clear that under no circumstances is she going to recognize North Korea as a nuclear state, then Kim Jong-un will try to explore breakthroughs, a way around this obstacle. And that's when engaging South Korea could come handy strategically for North Korea. I think, I believe, and I also believe the Moon administration probably thinks that that's going to create an open window opportunity, a very small one, for South Korea to engage North Korea economically and somehow use the economic engagement as a carrot to control North Korea's future actions. Essentially, it's what the sunshine policy proponents tried to do 10 years ago as well. And it's a very risky strategy, but then I think that's the only way out of this conundrum, because otherwise there's no sense, it doesn't make any sense to combine pressure and the economic engagement at the same time. I don't think these two are being implemented in parallel. We can only have success if we implement pressure first and see how North Korea reacts to that, and actually measure our engagement, level of engagement, according to North Korea's response.
There's been very few, almost now, that I know of, who said that North Korea will not give up its nuclear weapons. They all, even the people on the street, they believe North Korea will not abandon its nuclear weapons because they have invested so much for the last 20 or 30 years, and this is the only guarantor of their region's survival. We also think about the opportunity cost if North Korea will lose. If North Korea really continues to develop these missile nuclear capability without maybe freezing or dismantling them, at a certain point they're going to have a huge opportunity cost. No opening up, and a lot of the sanctions and pressures even from China and Japan, Korea. So they have to weigh in this kind of the advantage and disadvantage of continuing this kind of nuclear programs. So there are very few people, even though for the next 5 years, North Korea will never use a nuclear weapon. True to that, but if we do some, exercise wonderful good diplomacy, and also we make some, comparable, some reasonable concessions to North Korea, they might come to that kind of negotiating where this kind of, not just giving up totally, but temporarily suspending nuclear activities and freezing and dismantle gradually. So this is all gradual matter. It's not just one that can be done overnight.
Now, as we close out, I want to put you two gentlemen in a very difficult spot. So I'm going to start with you. Give us your prospect of inter-Korean relations under the Moon Jae-in administration. So 3-5 years later, where are we going to be in terms of cross-border relations?
Okay, so I'm trying to look for my crystal ball first, but then, so as I mentioned before, in my view, is that there are two races going on at the same time. The one is North Korea's race to become a nuclear state. The other one is our race, the international community's race to stop North Korea from becoming one. So I think these two forces are going to clash, but within a short period of time. My belief is that North Korea would like to complete its nuclear development as soon as possible by year 2020 or year 2019, who knows? And we'd like to stop it. So we are going to see some sort of resolution to the crisis. There are two outcomes. One is that we are going to recognize, or no more than better way of putting it is that we are going to accommodate North Korea as a nuclear state, officially or unofficially, most likely the latter, or we are going to frustrate North Korea from becoming one. And we're going to see an outcome of that very soon, meaning like 2 or 3 years' time. And the real improvement or deterioration in the inter-Korean relations will come after that. North Korea having either been frustrated or having satisfied its strategic objectives, it's going to approach South Korea again. So in that sense, we're going to see a different picture in the inter-Korean relations in 2 or 3 years' time. But until then, we're going to see this major conflict and standoff between the two Koreas.
So my comment for the question is, what are the prospects for inter-Korean relations for the next 4 or 5 years? Just for 1 or 2 years. They believe, they finally have a new conservative, not conservative, but liberal and progressive, even progressive governments in Korea. That's what North Korean leadership has been waiting for the next 10 years. Now we have a more pro-dialogue government in North Korea. So the chances are, in theoretically speaking, chances are good they might accept our proposal. But while not abandoning their nuclear capabilities, missiles, they are coming too closely, step by step, to our proposal to gain some economic benefits from this dialogue and to maybe drive a wedge between the United States and South Korea, because we have a totally different approach to solving these questions. And also, even in South Korea, there are people who have different ideas, conservative, moderates, and liberals. So they're trying to kind of drive a wedge between even the South Korean conservative and the liberal. So there's a lot of reasons North Korea can actually play a game against this kind of proposal. So nobody knows what's going to happen, but we have to be more kind of honest. Okay, we really mean that we want to help you. We want to kind of peace. It will take much longer time than the new government in Seoul might wish to see. They might wish to see. because North Korea has their own strategy, its own schemes, and which is kind of unifying the whole Korean Peninsula, even though you don't like to believe it, but they still have the kind of strategy to unify the whole in their own fashion.
So I think this is now really the time for South Korea and the U.S. perhaps together to come up with sophisticated strategies, because we now know that we're not dealing with, like quoting U.S. officials as well, we're not dealing with a crazy, illogical guy up there. We're actually dealing with perhaps a strategist up there who are actually trying to balance the game and gain an upper hand. So we need to be smart on our part as well.
That's right.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Go Myung-hyun, for today.
Oh, my pleasure.
And Dr. Kim Chang-su, as always. Thank you all for staying all throughout. And we will see you same time next week, right here on Peninsula 24.